Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Okay, CJ, returning saint. What's up, buddy?
Oh, just raring to go, Jin. I got some really interesting stuff to share with your viewers today. I did a little bit of homework on some protectors across the different schools of Tibetan Buddhism, and I'm super excited to share it. There's some scary ones. There's some kind of like mild ones, and I thought maybe you could help me when we get to like some of the more Nyingma protectors, because
Sure.
I know you're pretty versed in those.
Well, before we get to that, before I tell on myself in any way, maybe I should. Well, people kind of know. But anyways, the CJ, this is your episode, so make sure you plug yourself, plug your IG, which I know that is part of your kind of brand services, and then also plug that, like your services and what you're doing and what you're up to, so people
Sure.
know and can check them out.
So yeah, that's an interesting question right now because it has changed a little bit. I currently am not offering my services, but I will start offering them probably at the end of January. Right now, my practice is kind of like a little more theurgic than thaumaturgic, but you can find me at Fire Blood Bone on Instagram, and then I can't I forgot the name of my WordPress, but you can find the link to my WordPress on Instagram. I put some articles up there sometimes. A lot of it's kind of like regional folkish sorcery stuff for those of us who live in the southwestern United States. But I do kind of do some cultural comparison stuff. Like I plan on putting an article about a certain Ganesha practice and how it relates to something from the PGM. I do plan on in the near future eventually getting my own podcast up, but I really can't give you a time or a link to that. But just stay tuned if you're interested.
Well, CJ, I'm personally looking forward to that. Of course, you're always welcome on this platform. We've been Instagram mutuals for almost a year. I think you're so earnest in your sort of pursuit of Dharma, and just like you're interested in all the facets of it, because I remember how that is and was. So both like present tense, but also past tense, like just kind of the first spark of inquiry into different practices and different quote unquote deities, which I'm sure we'll get into. So why don't you, CJ, go through anything that you want to start with, and I'll let you lead. I'll let you lead this whole conversation, and we'll just like let it go, and let the Dakinis, or the protectors at least, maybe the queen of Dakinis, maybe we'll let Mahakali, or even Mahakala himself, maybe we'll let him sort of dictate how the flow goes.
Do you want to start with protectors, Jin, or are you ready to tell on yourself, or do you want to wait?
No, you want to start on protectors? We can start on protectors. That's fine with me.
Yeah.
That's how you start in Sadhana.
Yes. we'll get through the protectors and then we'll just kind of let the flow go from there. I think that's my idea of it. So I wanted to start with kind of the first protector that, like, so I know probably a lot of people who are interested in like the sorceress aspect of Vajrayana. Like, we all really like research papers and theses. Like, I have found a lot of information to fill in the gaps in between my lungs or in between this or that, where maybe the Lama didn't cover it as much as I would have liked them to, or maybe there's just not a lot of information publicly about this deity, or in the English language, I think is the key word there. But I
So
wanted
this is a so sorry, CJ. I just want to
no,
address what you said because I think it's a really important point. It's something you and I have talked about many times privately. I I think that everybody struggles at this level of like receiving empowerments in the modern time, and then they receive a limited sort of, I guess, at the various stages like lung wang and all of that, and then the oral instruction phase, and then but it's like so limited, I guess. And so for me, because I attended a sangha during my university time when I was also involved in like adjacent to Buddhist studies, for me it was very fruitful, but I did not possess like a greater understanding of what I was being taught. But
right.
I was taught like a fuller idea of what it was. I just didn't have the experience. I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the maturity, and I did not have the capability, perhaps, but potential, yes, but capability at that time to fully like practice the sadhanas in the proper way, and also like access them because that is something different. Like if you hit sadhana, you're hitting it in a it's very different. It's like you take on a whole new relationship. I mean, you know this, CJ, but I'm saying for the people listening, once you're doing it properly, it's like even if you don't hit that time every single morning, okay, you're still your relationship with that text even will completely change. It'll
Yes.
be like almost a different text. Like
And
if you're practicing it and achieving it, not necessarily accomplishing, but achieving it.
exactly. Well, and if you may not feel like the really embodied kind, the embodied practice, like you won't feel, oh God, I wish the New Age didn't steal so many words from our vernacular because I keep wanting to describe it in like a really New Agey way, but I don't mean it in that way. Like when I'm in certain sadhanas and I feel like I've gotten them down, like I have them, I'm doing them properly. It feels very embodied. Like you can almost feel the energy there. Does that make sense to you, Jin? Do you have that experience as well?
So this is something that you and I have discussed on your previous episode and then of other guests that I've had on. Look, for me, Buddhism is not necessarily about the vibe. Or sadhana certainly is not about the vibe. Whether I achieve in the sadhana or not that day is not dependent on the psychic vibes of me or of the quote unquote astrology or the stars aligning. It happens when I do it properly.
When you're locked in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
technical. It is not, even though I like to say like, yeah, I'm the scion and there are multiple of us and like we all carry forth the word. And I do believe that in an aeonic way. But I think in a particular way, sadhana for me is very technical, and it has very little to do with like especially like you said, the new age, like what when they say like, oh, I don't feel it, or I'm not in the vibe is off, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's irrelevant. Those are maras. That's mara appearing before you so you do not do the sadhana. If you do the sadhana, even in the worst conditions, even if you don't feel it or have psychic energies or see colors, like I do many times I see colors or the
Yes.
deity or
Mm.
whatever it is, if you do it in the worst conditions, that is accomplishment. And people don't like to hear that because it's not magical. It's not, but it's very real. That's very real, right? Like if you
It's
read some of the
achievable.
exactly, like when you read the Mahasiddhas, and like some of them are like sitting in like a cell, and like they got arrested for like insulting the king or whatever. That is accomplishment when you can complete the sadhana in like the horrific conditions, in the carnal ground conditions. So I just look at it very anti-supernaturalist, anti-spiritualist. That does not mean that those things, as you well know, CJ, and I know that you don't really disagree with me on this, is that it those things happen and are real, quote unquote, but that's not the point. So I just take it very technically, and I understand for some people that's very dry.
I take it a little bit more supernaturally, but I think that's just my personality. Um, but I don't disagree with you at all. Like I do think, you do the sadhana when you're happy, you do the sadhana when you're sad. If you feel something, you feel it. If you don't, you don't. But you're still continuing that practice and you're carrying on that discipline to the next day. I think that is what gets you those experiences, but they're not the end goal.
It's not the end goal. It's not the point of even the sadhana to have higher psychic experiences or higher Sephirotic
No.
experiences, or realization of like discriminating awareness and clarity and Rigpa. Like, yeah, if you get there, that is really special, and you should say, yeah, I fucking got there. I achieved. Okay, so the next day when you don't hit it, are you going to let the experience, sorry about that, are you going to let the experience discourage you? That's the
No.
problem with the clinging to the I'm not, you don't do this, CJ. I'm saying for other people do feel like this. I felt like this. It's just
I
normal,
have
right?
to. Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I try and do. It's not that it's not supernatural, it's not that it's not spiritual, of course, but you don't want to rely on those kinds of things as like the vehicle, because sadhana itself is the vehicle. And
Yes.
your mind it just has to do it. It just has to do it in any condition, in a hailstorm, in an igloo, in like if you're in the worst mood, if you just had a fight with your spouse or whatever, your sky spouse, or anything, you still have to do it. And so I think that when you say like I'm not in the mood, or I'm not feeling it, or the vibe's off, or the astrology's
Mara.
bad. Yeah, that's what it is. It's Mara. And if you want to use a really Christian thing, I know, freak everyone out, it's like Satan appearing before you, telling you not to pray.
Yeah, I mean, unironically, yeah. And here's the thing though, because I know on the path you will have times where you skip your sadhana. And not everybody likes to admit it, but we all do sometimes. And when we do that, do we feel better the next day if we skip our sadhana? We don't. We don't. Like, I feel ashamed whenever I do. Like, I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything.
Talk to your sky wife every day.
I talk to my earth wife every day.
Well, then, that's she's a conduit to the Dakinis too. So, in her own
With
way.
yes. And I love that frame of thinking for those of us who are partnered householders. Um and I think like kind of the modern like Western thing with Tantra, like when you go to actual Tantra, whether it's Indian or Vajrayana, pardon me, I was about to burp.
Clearing a wind horse channel. I'm just gonna say that happens. That for real happens in sadhana. I don't burp, but I hiccup. So
Mm,
this happens to me all the time. If doing preliminary like starter for daily, I'm talking daily sadhana. I'm not talking special fire puja or anything like that. To have when you're doing the preliminary prayers, I hiccup all the time, and I know exactly what that means. I know that I'm clearing a channel. I know that a blockage is being removed. I know a karma is being removed, but that's such a subtle, weird kind of like very that's not something that you're going to go to the Dharma Center and they're going to be like, yeah, some people burp and some people hiccup when you're starting your preliminaries because you're actually clearing wind horse channels. But
a
that's something
little
you
bit of that
learn over
long
time,
ta.
right?
Yeah, a little bit of that long ta.
Have to make the horse trot.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. God forbid it comes at the other end.
Well, we won't get into that, but if you do practice Hayagriva, I'm just saying Hayagriva is traditional for clearing intestinal blockages. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that it's to replace a doctor. I'm just saying in a traditional Buddhist magical way of thinking. That is what Hayagriva is. One of his particularly the things he's known for, partly because of his origin story. So
Jen,
it can happen.
I've been listening to a lot of your episodes, and you don't have like a true Hayagriva episode, which is a sin, in my opinion.
Look, CJ, people
it needs
are not
to happen.
I okay. Well, then we will do one together. But let me say this: the male deities, for whatever reason, even though you and I are very excited by them, like all of them, like even the ones I don't practice, like I don't practice Yamataka, I'm still excited by it. I see the iconography. I'm like, yeah, it's cool as fuck. That's adamantine body. Like, let's fucking go. It's like the slayer of death, and he wears the head of death on his head. That's fucking cool. Exactly. But people are just not as excited about the male deities, and I think I understand why. Because they arise very much in a dialectical and dialogical relationship with the upasaka, meaning that you actually have to do the practice. Even if you're just talking frontal generation, you have to do it for them to arise. People want the sky fairy to come down they want to see the Dakini ride the lightning. But not everybody's going to see that. That's just, everybody does a male deity. So, that's just, it's part of learning how to do the full sadhana. So the Sangha of Dakinis will appear eventually, maybe in a subtle way and maybe in a more gross way. But every kid, but everybody starts with a male deity. They're fully deserving of our respect. They're the most powerful in terms of exactly like you referenced, Rei Lotsawa. Like Yamataka, if you're Gelugpa, then you consider him the most powerful. But obviously I consider, we have Vajra, of course. He's like an equivalent deity, equivalent power. Then you have for Nyingma, well, they don't really teach this anymore, but the Krota Yamari and the Rakta Yamari, Black Razor of Death, Red Razor of Death. Then you, of course, have Hayagriva. So Hayagriva is one of the oldest protectors and also idams, and also he can be part of the 8 pronouncements Haruka. And he actually has a specific form in certain kinds of chakra samvara. So he's a very important deity, and he's a healing deity, and he just is, I practice Hayagriva, but I practice it more as a protector practice now. But that's just because it shifted for me. But that doesn't make him less important.
I've started, since you're telling on yourself, I think it's okay for me to. I got two Hayagriva practices. I got the empowerments for them. I do the red Hayagriva, which is more the healing, or the kind of it has a magnetizing aspect to it, but not like you would think, as you would know, Jen. But
it's the king of outer disharmonies.
Exactly, yes. And I've done the black Hayagriva practice, which is one of the most challenging sadhanas I've ever done.
Black deities are very difficult. People are way underestimated. I'm glad you're saying it, because you're not the only one. I struggle with some of them too. So,
but that practice, I really enjoy Hayagriva. He is, I would say I'm willing to share my yidams. I don't expect you to. He's my yidam right now. I'm kind of trying to cultivate that practice and get it to where some of my other practices were at, and just expand my knowledge, expand the sorcery, expand the theurgy, just kind of be live in the Hayagriva Potala mountain.
And you have to. What you're saying is so fundamentally important. People are going to be like, what? He's changing his meditational deity? Hello? Yes, that's what Tantra is. Even Indian Tantra, they will change. Not always, not everybody, but a lot of them do. A lot of them will worship multiple forms and accomplish them. And Buddhists, this is a very Buddhist thing, is to do multiple different idams through your whole life for different purposes, maybe, and then maybe in different sadhanas and different texts. And so you'll pass through many cosmological, like you're saying, like the king of Potala Mountain. Yes, the blazing king at the end of time.
Cool
And
as
so
he has a fucking horse on his head.
Hung
Like,
Hung Nay.
exactly. But like Hayagriva is so slept on. Like
Slept
he
on.
is so slept on. And his sorcery is badass. I don't really feel comfortable sharing anything about it,
Sure.
but I love his sorcery. Like it has been producing internal or inner, outer, and secret cities for me. Like it's changed a lot of stuff. And you mentioned earlier about how it clears intestinal blockages. I am someone who has struggled with IBS, and I can drink milk now since I've started. I'm not blaming it, particularly on the Hayagriva practice per se, but it did occur around the same time.
I mean, look, this is what he does. He clears poisons from the outer environment. The body is the outer environment in
Yes.
one way of thinking. He tames nagas, but I'm not talking about nagas as an actually physically poisonous serpents. But yes, he can do that too if you live in that kind of place. But really, it's about nagas as subtle energies, maybe outside, maybe inside the body. But when those energies come into disharmony, they can cause certain kinds of naga diseases. Cancer is a naga disease. Um, they're watery, damp, and cold. So IBS is perfect because that in would be considered a damp. Well, that can be a damp heat disorder, but
Mm.
regardless, that can be a naga disease. And
Yes.
so, that's what he does. He does the taming of the nagas. It's one of his primary functions, especially. So you can relate this to an outer gross sort of manifestation as the land is actually tamed, physically tamed, if there's a lot of overgrowth, poisonous plants, poisonous snakes, poisonous animals, scorpions, all of that. That's considered a manifestation of imbalance. He
Yes.
tames it and he brings the land protector in his retinue. So,
Which
can also be the body.
and you can further tie that into what we were discussing at the beginning of the podcast, because I'm not going to share exactly how you do a protector sadhana, because I'm just not. But a lot of them begin with you generating as Hayagriva or as your Yidam, but he is one that's mentioned in a lot of the texts.
Yes. Guards the gate of the west. He is the king of he is one of the host kings, right? If you
He
want to
is.
say from Kriya or Charya Tantra, he's considered to be a wisdom king. Like people will know more from Japanese Buddhism, but yeah, they exist. They exist in Tibetan Buddhism too.
They
But
absolutely do.
they absolutely do. So he's considered to be one of the primary kings. And even in our basic, this is not for every school, obviously, but I've talked about this before, so I'm comfortable in discussing, especially with you, CJ. But like even Om Ahom. So you do Om, white Garuda,
Mm-hmm.
Ah, short
Yes.
Ah, red Hayagriva, and
Hum.
Hom with black Yamataka. So he's so important, so important. It's like this is why the Dalai Lama, like whatever people's feelings about him are, and that's fine. But this is why, like he's been doing this since he was a kid. That's why a lot of accomplished people do Hayagriva as a child, because it doesn't just give these kind of like um, corporeal kind of protections, which obviously he does, like Kavacham, he gives you the armor of the
Yes.
deity. It's
Yep.
one of his, it's a primary function of his, I'd say, inner function, maybe, or a secret function. Not bad to discuss because a lot of people have, discussed it. I'm not saying it for me or for you, CJ. I'm just, as a broad, like we'll say, kind of articulation of what he does. And then he also grants the accomplishment of speech. So you might be thinking, okay,
there we go.
Right, because why is that important? Well, if you're giving oral instructions, speech is pretty important. And if you are also reciting mantras, which is perhaps more you and I in particular, why that people like us would want to accumulate a lot of Hayagriva recitations, one of the reasons at least, is because he allows you to recite the mantras, or if you accomplish it at least, he gives you the city of that lower register, everyone knows, like the Bhutanese, like black metal style chanting. Now, that is not the point. That is just an outer Vox city. That's not even a special city, and you just become able to do it over time. It's not even really magic or anything. But a lot of people feel like you need that. You kind of need that click of that city, if you want to call it that, to really recite the mantra properly.
Yes.
So he gives that. We'll say that.
Like the city of speech, I don't mean to bring it to such a gross place, but I think you covered a lot of the theurgic applications. But ultimately they're all the same. Anyways, what I was going to mention is if you're in sales, I recently got a sales job, and it was, interestingly enough, I haven't thought of this before, but it was right around the time I think I was kind of getting into my really good Hayagriva sadhana swing that I got this job. And I've been doing his practice. I have a different focus right now. I'm more into the guru yoga, just kind of getting that squared. But anyways, I've noticed that the more I do the practice, the better I get at sales. And that's a very interesting thing. That's not what I'm necessarily aiming at, but it is one of those outer ordinary cities, I would say.
Look, red family deities, this is no secret to anyone who listens to this podcast, right? Red deities grant a magnetizing function. Now, people have different ideas of what this means. So I'll just speak for me, but this is more of a Nyingma view, or even a Rime view, we could say. Red practices are for personal power. Yes. Magnetizing really means personal power. Now, this is more of an inner layer meaning. There's nothing wrong with that. So it's actually more important than the magnetizing property, actually. I know you know this, CJ, but I'm saying this for the broad audience. Personal power does not mean like power over others. It actually means power over yourself and over your own obstacles.
You're becoming the center of your own mandala, and that's an idea you see in Vajrayana a lot.
Well, this goes to another really important question, or not a question, but maybe just a topic that you can touch on and I'll touch on if you want. The mandala, the nature of it. The deity is also the mandala. Yes. I know you know this, CJ. So when you accomplish a deity or a wisdom king, so let's just hold Hayagriva. Let's say he's not an Idam right now, but we'll say just a Charya protector. I know he is an Idam and very important in many different higher yogas, okay? But we'll just say for now, if you accomplish him, you've accomplished the western gate of the entire mandala. So in theory, you've also accomplished all the Western protectors underneath.
Yes. And that's how you get power over these protectors, is through accomplishing the central deity.
Okay, let's get into that. Which protectors, CJ, did you want to perhaps discuss first?
I'm excited. There's a few that I left off the list, and I mean, some of my favorites I left off the list because I really like the way that you've explained them before. That would be Ekajati, Dorje Legpa, Rahula.
I love Dorje Legpa. I love Ekajati. I love all the Nyingma protectors are my favorite. You know this, CJ.
Yes,
but
mine
Dorje
too.
Legpa doesn't get enough love. He really
No,
doesn't. He's cool as fuck. Like people have no idea.
maybe after I want to discuss him a little bit, maybe after the show with you, Jen, because there is some stuff I'd like to kind of tell you or ask you, ask, whatever, regarding him. But yeah, I wanted to get started with Sue Marpo, actually. And it's great that we've been discussing Hayagriva during the intro to this episode because Sue Marpo, so I took notes for this. I wanted to keep my thoughts like in line and not let my excited like Vajrayana ADHD like run around the podcast. But the notes I took were pretty simple, and I was thinking maybe we could just bounce off of each other and kind of like fill in the gaps there, if that's all right with you,
Absolutely.
Jen.
I'm going to let you lead, CJ. If you want to ask me something or if I have something really important to add, I'll add it. But other than that, it's I'll let you lead and then we'll see what happens.
Beautiful. Cool. So Sue Marpo, he was a might demon, or I believe that correlates to like in the Indian tantras a rakshasa. Um, he was subjugated originally by Hayagriva, but Padmasambhava encountered him and kind of reaffirmed his vows. His origin story, there's a couple different ones.
Let me pause you. Sorry, CJ. Let me really quick because I think that's really interesting. And I think a lot of people don't get that. So, yes, he is brought into the sort of cosmology of Buddhism by Hayagriva because
Yes.
he obviously rides a horse. I'll let you get into that. But anyways, that's why. But then he forgets, very Gnostic in a way. He forgets that he is oath-bound because it's not like Hayagriva is sitting there on the whatever mountain. Sumarpo is obviously associated with like a specific mountain or specific mountains,
Yes.
especially from Mustang. And so it's not like Hayagriva is sitting there being like, you bad boy, you better get in line. No. As we said, the male deities arise in dialogical and dialectical relationship with the upasaka. So, of course, it takes a great teacher who is able to do frontal self-generation and perfection stage, who is able to generate a deity to remind him that, yes, you actually are in a mandala. Yes, you have vow obligations. And yes, you are in the retinue of Hayagriva, and he is your boss. So anyways, I'm sorry. I just wanted to
No,
point that
I'm
out
glad you
that
did.
protectors don't, especially worldly, and we may have to get into this difference between like a worldly protector and a enlightened protector, because I think that there is quite a qualitative and cosmological difference, and maybe even an ontological difference. But I feel like that's a really important point to touch on. Just like they need to be reminded that you
Yes.
you do follow Dharma, and you have to listen to people who are approaching Dharma in the right way.
Well, and Sue Marpo is not an enlightened protector. Him and his retinue, which consist of, so they're called his 7 brothers, but they are or his 6 brothers. I mean, he's the 7th. They're actually emanations of him, and there are further. There's like a huge army of rakshasas around him. I mean, I want to say around 1,000 rakshasas, and please don't quote me on this. And then each brother is accompanied not by a consort, but by a hunting dog goddess. And these hunting dogs, they each have different colors to them, and they have different heads, like I want to say, but they're all dogs. And they're kind of
So
called,
he is associated with red dogs. That's like Sumarpo
yes.
himself. But dogs
Hmm.
are a very important aspect of who he is, and also and there's a reason for this. Sometimes he is also called Red Mahakala. Now I know this is given to other people, and Mahakala is obviously a different deity and a different. He's an enlightened protector, very different, but just as Red Hayagriva sometimes is called Red Mahakala too. So Mahakala is also a king of hosts. So just like Sumarpo, And so
Yes.
that's what that, I'm just emphasizing there's a similarity, a commonality between how the main deity appears with his retinue, and then he has specific symbolic sort of they're not just symbolic, they actually have, as we've always said, inner outer secret meaning. They're very important, the iconographic presentation, because it relates to the text very much. And also
Yes.
secret layer of understanding. So you don't even need the text if you're really high knowledge. But yeah, he can be considered a red Mahakala. Now, this is not the same as Indian Mahakala, as in like he is not Mahakala as in Shiva. He is a Mahakala, meaning in the class of deities that can be considered time kings. Sorry, I just wanted to add that point, CJ, because I think it gets lost sometimes in translation.
No, don't apologize. I mean, I didn't know that. So I mean, I'm always happy to sponge some more tantric knowledge off of you, Jin. Um, so one commonality I've noticed amongst all these protectors, and this is definitely the case with Sumarpo, is he was originally, in some origin stories, because they all have a couple, he was originally a vow-breaking monk who was murdered, and he swore upon his death that he would come back as a demon. And if you look at any of the rituals in which he's invoked, they're extremely wrathful. Like, I remember, like, I first found out about Sumarpo, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and just learning about some of the rituals. I've never practiced him. I don't have the lung or the wang or anything for him, but just reading on the page how wrathful these rituals were, it was insane. I mean, they're mentioning like offering animal hearts to him and blood, and it's super heavy metal.
Look, all the worldly protectors have this. I'm not contradicting you, of course, CJ. It's all the worldly protectors have this history, this origin as demonic
Yes.
gods, as full demon gods. Like what like online Christians think of the world. Everything's demonic, everything's satanic. Yes. The Tibetans will admit that they were demon worshippers. Not just demons as in like the Goetia, and of course there are definitely overlaps. Like I think that we've made the case many times over. I think I've made the case. I
Yes.
think everyone on the show has in their own way contributed to that sort of Central Asian axial age system case. But I think the truth is also that the demon gods did rule the world at one time. That's a very Tibetan understanding. And that people worship them, and people worship them in very horrendous ways. And that also contributes to the evil of the deity, is when people make offerings and pray to evil gods. It
Yes.
actually makes them more quote unquote real.
And I think other traditions would agree with you. And I'm not saying that these other traditions, their gods are evil. I would not go that far. But when I think of like some of the more like animal sacrifice heavy traditions, they're kind of known, like world traditions, they're kind of known for their deities and their spirits and their gods being very corporeal. And I've always, I mean, for a while that was a huge draw to me, but it's always at least been interesting.
Look, if the demonic gods can become they can become oathbound in Dharma, then what's stopping like a human who has a lot more agency than a god,
Yep.
a lot more, they're a lot more real in a way. I'm not saying the gods aren't real or like the, worldly spirits aren't real, but they're in some ways because everything requires consciousness to sort of activate a sort of object, like the witness. It's very Buddhist, right? Like we are the
Hmm.
witness to the gods arising.
Yes.
So we get to choose how we want to worship. We get to choose what we want to worship. And so I think that you're 100% right. I think that there's a element of like the worldly spirits in general, not just Buddhist ones, but just in general, that manifest according to the desires of man, desires of the people that are worshiping it. So the religious sort of tendencies, but then also they in turn affect everyone else, because it also changes the sort of vibe. We were talking about this a lot at first, changes the vibe and the nature of the land around it. So if you're like Buddhism's a lot about subjugation and conquering the land spirits.
Yes.
So if you're trying to conquer and subjugate land spirits to make it more conducive to practicing Dharma, because that is the entire point of subjugation, is to make the land calm so it's conducive to practicing Buddhism, then that is doing the opposite. So that is why the worldly gods are often brought into Buddhism, because you want to make sure that they're functioning in a way that is dharmic and not adharmic. I know that was sort of really long. I apologize. But
No.
I think it's interesting. And I think that this is just these little kind of notes that I think people, not obviously not UCJ, but people listening really can maybe, they can hear it and really maybe more fully understand.
Well, and I mean that's I think one of the things that makes this podcast so great is there's constantly like little gems of tantric understanding being left out within it, and those who are already kind of geared that way, they can pick these up, and it, like, even one little tip or one little kernel, it can carry your practice that much further. But going back to what we were saying about the protectors, I thought that what you were saying was interesting, because he actually has a shrine at the Samye Monastery, and in that shrine there's a chopping block, and there's a lot of poltergeist activity kind of around that chopping block. So basically what happens is the shrine is very rarely entered by the monks or the nuns or anyone there, but they still find slash marks on this chopping block from the sword that's nearby. And I guess kind of the folklore around it is that that's where souls are punished. And you see that with protectors a lot, especially the worldly ones. They are more corporeal, and it's almost like they still have some of that. I don't want to say evil, because they're not, but they have some of that wrath still very much alive and contained within what they are now as oath-bound protectors.
So this is a really interesting point that you're raising, CJ, because this is something that is very, I think, very complex for Western Buddhists, like the idea that a sinner can be brought in to a retinue and made a quote unquote god or evil spirit. Maybe we'll just say evil spirit, but it is kind of like a god, lowercase g god, of course, but yeah, a god sort of, nonetheless, a boon giving thing, right? But
Yeah.
it can be evil, can do evil things, but once you're brought into the retinue of the deity, you're no longer fully agential. And so this is often a remedy for people. Like you were saying, his origin story is a monk who was murdered or killed or suicided, whatever. There's different, obviously, versions of it.
Yes.
Like,
There
as
is.
all protectors, there are multiple different stories of how, not just different schools, there'll be multiple different texts, maybe in the same canon or the same cycle, that actually give different origins. That's okay, because they actually have little meanings that are exactly like what you were saying about the show. But I don't know if that's true, CJ, but I would like to think that, yeah, there's like, I have enough experiential knowledge that I'm able to, like, maybe, obviously doesn't replace anyone else's like textual or like teacher
No.
knowledge, but maybe there are like little things that people can glean from what we talk about, from the discussion that arises. But yeah, I think that the idea that a evil person, a bad person, an ontologically evil person can then enter into the retinue, and it might take many lifetimes, meaning that they might exist as a quote unquote ghost god. They might actually be there for what we understand is like thousands of years, but for them, it's not necessarily, time is not the same.
No.
But they might exist there in quote unquote thousands of lifetimes. That can mean two different things. That can mean lifetimes of the deity, meaning that a deity can both be killed and re-arise, or it can also mean human lifetimes. Our perception of their life, the length of it, takes multiple human cycles to sort of live out their bad karma. But it's actually a really purifying thing to be enter into the retinue. It's considered to
Yes.
be quite a large boon, even of a worldly deity, because it's so purifying for karma. So I just want to add that it's not considered to be a punishment. Actually, it's considered to be like actually a greater kind of like, you've obviously earned it through past karmas, but you've just chosen in this life to be evil. So then in your rebirth, you will obviously enter this very purifying kind of carnal ground era.
No, I'm glad you said that, Jin. I haven't really tied the whole chopping block, I guess, reports to the concept of sinners entering the deities, the protectors mandala. But yeah, that's actually all I have for Sumarpo, other than he's the son of Dorje Legpa, which I thought was a cool little thing there. I have some crazy ones next though. Like these are gonna
Okay,
be
let's do more crazy ones. You know, we're getting outside of my territory of knowledge, but I'm excited. So,
I wasn't able to find a whole bunch about the Sakya witches, but I
I do know a
remember.
little something about
Okay, okay,
that.
awesome. I'm glad. So they're basically known as the three blazing female spirits, and they, from what I was able to parse together, and this is where I want you to step in and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were like three witches in life that had demon possessions. And I mean, is that correct to your
So,
knowledge?
to my knowledge, so this is how I understand them, CJ. This is not a contradiction in any way to what you said. The way I understand it is they are Bamo. As we said
Yes,
with
Bamo.
Sumarpo, he's also a Bamo in a way. Even though he reincarnates as something else, not reincarnates, excuse me, he undertakes rebirth as a Sen spirit, like a worldly kind of god or demon, not a god. But he becomes a Drala later, all right, in the retinue of the higher deity. Okay, but the Bamo really is a class of spirit. So it is a kind of spirit, meaning that like you're talking about like witches. That's what a Bamo can be translated as. Now it's very different than a sky witch. Like let's be like, I'm not saying this for you, CJ. Again, it is not the same as a Dakini. It is not the same as like a Khandro or a Yogini.
Mamo.
This is not even a Mamo. This is like something different. This is something else.
Yes.
This is a person. It can also be a man, interestingly. Can be a man, a monk, usually someone who has cities, in fact. It's usually almost always someone who has gross. I'm talking gross cities. I'm not talking,
Super mundane.
you're right, super mundane. I'm talking gross cities. But magical powers, who is considered to be a wizard or a witch in real life. And so those and then specifically evil ones, meaning that they intentionally cause harm. Now, there are, of course, a class of witches and wizards in the Central Asian landscape that aren't considered inherently malevolent, that are more, quote unquote, gray, that are kind of more neutral, true neutral. They kind of go either way. And they're ignorant in the sense that they don't know, like, what their magic will have, what karmic repercussions their magic will have. But in general, a Bamo is a spirit of someone who has magical powers, who dies in death, like has a horrible death, usually at the hands of another magical person or of a demon. So a demon can also eat a Bamo, usually one that they've summoned. This is a common kind of mythological trope. So, like you're saying, like they will summon demons. Maybe there'll be like a witch on the carnal ground, we'll say, and they're summoning goetic spirits into their bodies, and so to like fly. But it's not the same as sky flying. Again, to be clear, it is a different. It's like a gross city of flying. So it's not permanent. It's just temporary, and so they'll die in horrible ways. But they'll also, one of the most important sort of traits of a Bamo is they will curse the Dharma. So
Yes.
they
And
will
yep.
say, I'm gonna be reborn against Dharma. It's not even necessarily a specific person, but it's like specifically against like monks, and they always the stories always go like they attack monks, pilgrims, those kind of people. They're very specifically antagonistic. Maras, agents of Mara, agents of Satan.
Well, and you mentioned that they were killed by, I mean, a lot of the Bamos are killed by other practitioners, and that's exactly what happened with one of these Sakya witches. Her name was Namka Droma, and sh a Sakya leader named Drachin Tutob Wangchuk, he tried both peaceful and wrathful methods to tame her, but he eventually married her to seal her power. And while they were living together, she died, and afterwards he flayed her face and turned the skin into a mask, which was then kept in a box, and it was only taken out for special occasions. The mask was used to bind her spirit to serve the Sakya lineages. And I found that that was really interesting, but also another interesting fact about the Sakya witches, um, they in a lot of cases, from what I was reading, and I mean, who knows, but they are in part controlled by other protectors, and not all of them enlightened protectors. And I thought that was really cool. It kind of speaks to a level of hierarchy.
Hierarchy, great word, because that is the key to understanding the mandala. It's the key to understanding like what a worldly protector, even in what a worldly protector versus an enlightened protector even means. Hierarchy. I know
Exactly.
people don't love that word. I get it. I'm a little bit of a rebel myself. I understand. But it is really important to understanding how the mandala and the deity system and the spirit classifications work. And it's just like it's as important as understanding the spirit classifications in like the keys or in any grimoire, any of the Western traditions. It's a little more fixed and also a little less fixed. So that sounds like a paradox, but it's really not, because you can understand as the so one way to think of it, I think, is you can say all the spirits have classes or like categories that they can be
Yes.
sort of epistemically labeled. But
Bamos, Rakshasas,
exactly.
Nagas.
But those
Yeah.
have greater potential. There are deities with those same kind of outer presentation, existence, appearance qualities. So this is really, it's about potential. It's about higher potential and practicing Dharma, even when you're not in the same enlightened, like you're not in the human state of practicing Dharma. You're in a kind of worldly God state or worldly demon state. Like even in those states, you still have the choice to go with the wheel. And so there's a kind of blending of worldly and enlightened deities at a point, simply because you recognize them as like a all part of the emanation of the higher cosmic Buddhas. So even if they're enlightened, even if they're not enlightened, even if they're worldly, they're still kind of sparks, if you want to call it that, of the higher Buddha.
Yes.
This is complicated and no one is like listening to this. I don't expect them to like get it right away, but it's a really important thing to like note, I think.
And I mean, to kind of relate to what you were saying, and this will tie up my notes for the Sakya witches, because I think this is a very secret practice amongst the Sakyas. Um, but it's not like these spirits are being abused. Um, One of the nieces of a high Sakya Lama who was staying at a Sakya monastery that had really heavy ties with the Sakya witches, she was staying there to take care of her uncle, who he was the abbot of that monastery. And she started to experience a lot of, like with Sumarpo, a lot of this poltergeist activity while she was caring for him. She would occasionally trip or fall going down these really steep staircases, and she would feel an unseen force catch her, which she attributed to the Sakya witches. And when she didn't care for him in the right way, or, she would get a little bit lax, her feet would get pulled at night by this invisible force. And that kind of it made my hair stand on end, but at the same time, it was really cool because it points to what you were saying, is that every being, I mean, even the ghost who lives in your attic, and knocks around there all night, they have a place in the Dharma if they choose to take it.
So this is a really good point, and I am glad that you shared the anecdote because I think it's important to like what the Bamo are. They are really not for anyone who, they're not for me, they're not for CJ, they're not for anyone listening to this podcast. Like, even if you're sitting here thinking like, oh, I'm gonna like subjugate the Bamo spirits, like, no, you're not. You're gonna, that's gonna, you're really not. They are
I'm good on
protectors
that.
of the Cone family, who are the head of Sakyapa. So they're
Yes.
personal protectors. The one caveat with the Bamo, and this is why it's usually male heads of household. So there are multiple Cone families that make up the Sakya sort of royalty, you could call them, because that's often how they're described, as like a royal family, not the royal family, but a royal family. Is that they do actually take life force to propitiate. They take life force to cultivate. This is often why the Sakyapa are really big into like Kurukulla or
Mm,
Hayagriva or these kind of like Amateus, or even like the certain kinds of like those kind of red practices that also increase life force and nectar. I'm not talking about outer nectar. I'm talking about inner yoga nectar. And we'll get into that another episode. But I'm talking about like the nectar produced in sadhana through visualization, not an outer nectar. So those red practices can increase life force and nectar. So I just want to say that. So that is a big part of why, if you look at the Sakyapa protectors, or even like the deities that are most generally cultivated in that school, they are often red deities, and Kurukulla is obviously one of them. So it's a really important, just to be like, just because we're saying like, yes, these spirits do have a place in Dharma, they do, but they're extremely ferocious. They're extremely powerful, and they actually take life force, actual life. They take life to cultivate. So, this is the other problem, CJ, and it's not about you or anyone listening to this that I'm specifically talking about. A lot of people will cultivate the outer protectors, worldly or enlightened, thinking, oh, it's just another god that I can just like, I'll treat it like some Greek thing and leave it like a croissant and like some grapes, and it's all like good and happy. And, it's just like, no, you're talking about things that are extremely destructive, extremely powerful, way more powerful than you, not you, but than me, than most people. So just remember that. Just because something sounds cool, because something sounds really powerful, it doesn't mean that you should do it. I just want to say that as a caution, because the Bamos did sound cool to me when I was like a kid too. And but I learned that like, yeah, actually I can use Kurukulla, not in the same exact way, but if I want to, call something to me, that's a great way to do it. I don't need a Bamo.
that's the way to do it.
That's the way,
Kurukulla,
exactly. You get it,
Hayagriva,
CJ.
yeah, both deities, which are fully enlightened beings, they can do that without a lot of these super harmful side effects. Like I personally wouldn't mess around with the Sakya witches. And if you like the witch imagery and you're dead set on getting a protector practice, I mean, you can agree with or disagree with me, Jen. That's fine, and I'll understand why. But I mean, Ekajati, I think, is a more safe alternative.
I was, you read my mind, CJ, because that's, if you want, okay, so everybody's like interested, always bugs me about this. Oh, we want to worship like the Barbelo figure. Okay, we got that. We got you. Like Ekajati,
I
right? Like
love her.
Tara. I love her. I think she's amazing. I think it's cool. I think it goes with Gnosticism so well. I think
Yes.
it completes like this whole aspect of Central Asian religion, and just like mysticism, just even Western mysticism. I think she's that character. I think you can easily make a case that she is that character, but the legacy and the story is a lot more complete. And of course, she gets subjugated. So she is still very dangerous. Like I'm not
Oh
disagreeing with
yeah,
CJ.
no, 100%.
This is very. We're not talking about. This isn't just
Green,
Hayagriva,
yeah, and this
right?
isn't
Like
just Green Tara.
right.
Like this is,
That's a better example. This is not Green Tara, for
and
the record.
I'm not crapping on Green Tara. I would never do that. She's an
No,
amazing goddess,
you can even
beautiful.
say that that Ekajati is Green Tara, and that is true in a
Yes.
deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
But for the outer practitioner, that is a totally meaningless kind of like it's something that you'll hear teachers and lamas say, and it will make no sense to anyone unless you're
Until
doing
it does.
right.
Until it
That's
does.
exactly right.
I think now that we're on the subject of Ekajati, would you like to tell myself and the listeners, I'm giving you the mic, about Ekajati, Dorje Legpa, and I think another one of me and Jin's deity sweethearts, Za Rahula.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, Ekajati. Well, she is the primordial grandmother. She's even called the Dowager Queen of all the Dakinis. All the Dakinis contain a spark, you could say, of her, a little piece of her corpse. I don't know. That's a good way to think of it, maybe.
I love
She
that.
is, she is the corpse upon which the Dakinis arise. So in old school Nyingma, like pre-Terma even, she is considered to be equivalent, yes, to Samantabhadri, all that is good. If you're doing non-dual yoga, you can understand why this actually makes a lot of sense.
She's a Dzogchen protector.
That's right. And so you're looking at the most ferocious, the most, more powerful than the Bamo, more powerful than any worldly god, Drala, more powerful than any other protector, really. Probably the most powerful. I'll just go on a limb and say that. That's my opinion. That's not necessarily CJ's, but I think so. A lot of other people think so too.
I haven't been working with the protectors long enough to have an opinion.
But they're all the same too. So let me do a very Buddhist paradox for people. But
okay.
But Ekajati is she's also known as the Queen of Secret Mantra. So
yes,
if you look at her iconography, she has a corpse, like many of them do, under her feet. Who is that corpse? Well, it's a Bamo. But it's not just a Bamo. And it's not just any evil spirit. It's actually a sorcerer. It's actually an upasaka, an oath breaker, a warlock, someone who has misused her secret mantra for anti-dharmic purposes. Part of her iconography often is a heart that she's eating, or a corpse popsicle. That's another way to describe it. That is also
petrified.
It can also be the corpse of an oath breaker. So she's not a deity to fuck with lightly, is what I'm going to say.
And her retinue, you can say the exact same thing about them.
Look, her retinue are all unenlightened Dakinis. They're the most ferocious of the ferocious.
Mamos.
They're the Rakshinis. They're the Vitalis, the vampires. All of them. The Bhutas, the Pretas, the ghosts, and the demons. It's everyone. She is the queen of the carnal ground. In a fundamental way, she menstruates the blood ocean. The ocean of samsara. It's just like we're talking about like primordial, like I said, she's the primordial grandmother. Like she is the queen of the swamp. You want to call it that. She is the queen of the carnal ground. She's higher than Kali. She's higher than, all the other protectors, Sri Devi. Like she is Sri Devi at this other stage, this primordial stage. She's just sitting on the carnal ground now, one eye blind, you could say, third eye blind, and she's eating the corpses. But she eats the corpses for a very specific reason. She's liberating people who cannot, for whatever reason, this is many people, doesn't make you bad, they cannot separate themselves from their worldly corpse. That is why she eats corpses. It's not to be ferocious, necessarily. She performs a ferocious action in Dharma, partly so we can understand that dualism is the greatest poison. So she's like that with words as well, and that's why she's the queen of the secret mantra. Because the secret mantra is actually not the bullshit words that we speak. It's actually the space, pristine primordial space, in between the words that we speak. That is where the secret mantra arises. So that's why she is the kind of queen of Mamos, which also means chaos. Very interesting if you're into like Austin Osman Spare or Peter Carroll or any of the Discordians, you'll see these prayers to Eris. Well, that's really interesting because obviously as the queen of Mamos, she is the queen of chaos. So
I've never drawn that connection with her. And I mean, with Ekajati, I think just going off of her appearance, she's one of the most wrathful female deities I've ever seen. I mean, one eye, one tooth, one breast, sometimes even one leg. And she's holding a human corpse and using it as a club. And in the other hand, like you said, is a severed human heart. And her mandala is terrifying itself. I mean, with the skeletons and almost like the volcanic activity, the black triangles. She's just a fascinating goddess, and she's very like striking visually.
Well, I should have probably gotten into that. So thank you, CJ, for giving an overview of her iconography. She also holds a swastika. This is very important to her understanding. Obviously, you know this. She is the sound. So you can interpret this however you want, but the deities are not really deities, as we said. But you can interpret this iconography as representational of the sound of the wheel turning. That's one way to understand. So she holds the swastika. She is associated with the Pleiades. She is a Mamos goddess, but she's also associated with Polaris. Very important. And like Mario from Symbolic Studies, who's been on the show, he often talks about like boar and dog symbol. I don't know. I forgot what it is. Anyways, it's like things that we all have in Tantra. Like we have Marici and we have Vajravarahi for boar.
I was going to say
they're also and they're obviously associated with her and also with the Pleiades as well, and with like the Big Dipper and Little Dipper. Depends on your system, because all of those are counted among the stars that she's kind of the queen of. But one thing that Tantra has that is relatively unique is that she has a wolf's head sometimes.
Yes.
And she is considered the queen of the Sky Iron Wolves. Now, the Sky Iron Wolves are not just regular wolves. Okay, so there's a point in Buffy, I can't believe I'm admitting this on recording, CJ. So there's a point in Buffy where Seth Green's character, who's a werewolf, goes to Tibet to learn werewolf practices. So
That's really cool.
It is really cool. And so I often wondered, because she's so closely, especially in Tibet, like if you know Ekajati, if you know the like ferocious Nyingma practices, like how sorcerous it can be, you know who she is, right? Like it's very connected to her. You often see the wolves in her iconography. If she's in the older iconography, she has an actual wolf's head. So it's like the relationship between her and werewolves is like very ingrained, not just iconographically, but also mythologically. And so I just wonder, is that what they were drawing from when they wrote that like aspect into the show? Anyways, there's a tangent, but it is about her. And so she is.
No, that was a badass tangent.
And what are wolves? So wolves have a secret tantric meaning. They're the protectors of the environment. I know this sounds very leftist, very like hippie dipshit. I'm not talking about that. It's the wolves as the protectors of the relationship, the treaty relationship, meaning karma relationship. That's all that means. The karma relationship that you have to the mountain gods, to the king of the mountain, because that's also her husband. And that's maybe a good segue into like another of the Nyingma protectors, Manning Ningpo, who is the eunuch Mahakala, who is one I particularly like him. So she bites off his lingam and she gives it, and then the lingam becomes, well, sometimes it can become her tooth. That's one way to understand it. And sometimes it can also become a Phurba. So this is maybe a different discussion, but it becomes a Phurba. Not Aquila, a Phurba. I mean, Aquila and a Phurba are sort of the same, but
They're
I'm
not.
using them separately.
Yeah.
Like they have a different
Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
for me. But you get it. So it becomes an actual Phurba, an actual dagger sorcery. So his Wang becomes a magic dagger for Tibetan sorcery or Central Asian sorcery. Now, this sounds horrendous, and obviously the Gnostics give it a very hermaphroditic overtone, not in Tantra. The idea is that Mahakala is kind of one of the aspects of God, capital G God, Maheshvara, who emanates
La
in
Chin.
order. Well, there you go, La Chenpo. So that's another protector. So we should eventually, I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we'll definitely hit on it in another episode. So we'll make a note of that. But it's the emanating kind of force that he's the king, time king, right? So he's the element of God who arises as time, you could say. So she bites off his lingam because he is constantly distracted by the Dakinis, who, as we said, are also her. So she doesn't want to share. And she also knows that if God enters into his ascetic mode, meaning like a Buddhist idea of that, because he is sometimes depicted in Yab Yum, and sometimes the mythological story around him can change. That's why it's so important to recognize that Mahakala is more of a class of deities in Buddhism that can refer to one figure. Like it makes sense. Like you can say this about Mahakala in general, and it applies to all of them, but then there are different kinds of forms, which are also different Mahakalas. So there are different time kings, many time kings.
That's super helpful. Yeah.
So he gets distracted. She bites off his thing, which is if you really secretly understand, I'll do a little drop for you, CJ. It's really Tantra. That's what she's really biting off.
Yeah.
So it's the sorcery practices. So that's why she's the queen of the secret mantra. Not because Tantra comes from her. It doesn't come from her. It comes from him. But she takes it for herself, which is also the story in the Puranas. Just not that it's not exactly the same, but there's a textual there's a mythological overlap that happens. And so you have to understand when you're looking at Ekajati, like you were saying, she has one eye. Well, I've told this story many times. You'll probably find it boring, CJ, and I won't get into it, but she's blinded.
Yes.
With the Dorje, with the Vajra. The tool Vajra, okay? So we're not talking about the Puranic or the Indian or the Iranian Vajra. We're talking about a closed prong Vajra, spun in a certain way, in a specific kind of spell, you could say. It's not really like that, but yeah, it kind of is. She gets blind because when she's blind of her physical material, the material eyes, she doesn't want to destroy material creation. She wants to destroy the fetters, the klipas, the tunnels, maybe you could say, that we exist within conceptually. Because it's a subtle body.
She turned her back on anti-cosmicism.
That's right. See, you get it, CJ. This is what I've been trying to say for 3 years. This is resolved in the 6th century. We say she turns her back on on being anti-cosmic because she's subjugated in Dharma. And then we also, as I said, she's also Samantabhadri. So she also can be considered the primordial consort of the Adi Buddha when you understand her as fully empty. So when you give up all the things that you think she means, she becomes something else. And so the Tantras later also built on this figure. She becomes Mahakali. So this is different than the deity Kali. Let's be clear. I know you know this, CJ, but for people listening, it's different. She rides a donkey. She's more related to a deity called Kalaratri. In fact, that's her Sanskrit name is Kalaratri for Sri Devi Palden Lamo. It's a form of Durga, but it's also a form of Kali. So that's complicated. We won't get into that, but it's a different form of Kali, older actually. And so, but Chamunda is even older, and Ekajati is the oldest. So As I said, she can be considered to be the primordial consort, and she can also be considered to be the originator of all the Dakinis. Now, this doesn't mean that we do pick and mix deity practice or protector practice, or that anyone
No.
listening to this should. You have to do the practices regularly, consistently, and appropriately in order to activate them. It takes time. And this is maybe the most fundamental difference between worldly and enlightened protectors. It's more maybe a subtlety, but the worldly protector will enact itself faster with less kind of ritual regularity, and it will also last very short. It's more for a worldly activity.
It's like with
And
ghosts. I mean, for the necromancers out there, it's ghosts. You can send them out, and they'll, you know, get you the job at Walmart overnight. But if you're trying to do it in a more skillful way with Kurukulla or, you know, some other gods, you're going to have to stack a certain amount of mantras. You're going to have to give a certain amount of offerings. You're going to have to show a certain amount of ritual and theurgic devotion.
Yep. That's it. But it will actually pay off long. It will last longer. It will
Yes.
result in more karmic fruits and
it'll
karmic
help other
purifications
people.
for the future. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the true difference. Is
not
that
the quick and
fruits are
dirty.
different. That's right.
And sorry
That
for
being
interrupting
said,
you.
no, you didn't interrupt me. I've been interrupting this whole episode. I apologize, CJ.
It doesn't bother
It's
me.
my
Jen,
favorite
you're fine.
subject. You knew that. Ekajati, you got me going. So
I love Ekajati, man.
I do too. And, you know, she, again, dangerous. Very dangerous. People will tell you, like, very dangerous, like a very dangerous deity. Because if, again, it's not, you can't just invoke her to misuse the practice. You have to understand the confines in which she will act in a dharmic way.
Yes.
And that's a big part of, like, well, we could call her son, Rahula, or the king,
Ooh.
the evil king of space and stars and planets.
The black cloud, the shadow lightning.
He's one of my favorites, to be honest. I love him so much. I mean, I love them all, but he has particular. He's always been very special to me. I've always been very attracted to his iconography, and I also love his function. So, like, we have talked about privately, like, a lot of astrological magic for us, like, especially for, like, modern Hermeticism, is when you compare it to tantric astrological magic, they're talking about, like, gross planetary magic. Tantric magic is a little different. We're looking at star mansions and
Yep.
evil
Zodiacs.
stars, and exactly. So it's just a little different. We're looking at a more Zoroastrian kind of like star layer. We're not
Well-
affiliated necessarily with the planets so much.
On top of that, like the idea of the grahas being almost demonic,
Right.
and
you go.
Rahula being who you call in to make them behave. You know,
This
if
is
you
really
have
interesting.
that practice, looking at not okay. I wrote an article about this, but
Okay.
sorry to interject. I get
No,
excited
please
when
do. Please do.
talk
I'm
about
here, I'm
talk
willing.
about Rahula, and I get excited. It just happens. I really like the Gnostic, adjacent Vajrayana perspective of the grahas being these beings that harm other beings, you know?
They're
And
archonic.
they
absolutely.
exactly, they are archons. And so
They're
the
called
Buddhas,
this. They're called this in Kala Chakra. This says
Yes.
very clearly, grahas are archons. Now, are they the great archons of, like, the, you know, the rulers of reality, like those kind of Gnostic archons? No. They're navigable, as CJ is very, very succinctly said. He is the big boss of the planets because he's also a graha. He's also a grasper because
Yes.
he's a naga.
yes. Well, and he's Rahu. He's the planet Rahu that has been converted to Dharma. And he actually has Ketu in his retinue. And one of my favorite things about Rahula and just about Vajrayana in general is I love using wrathful magic to make the planets behave. I love it. I love it because you'll have and maybe this is just something unique to me, Jen, but I have people catastrophizing about astrology, and I mean,
Yes.
I don't.
No.
I'm like, I don't give a flying fladoodle, dude. Like, like
Look.
I'll beat it with the ugly stick. I don't care.
Yes. See, this is what people don't. So you're hitting it, CJ. This is not unique to you. This is like a big part of my life on esoteric Twitter. I mean, I've been spending less time on Twitter lately, which is good, probably. I'm devoting more time to sadhana and to like physical life
Good for
things.
you. Yeah.
But it's a big part of esoteric Twitter, right? Is normie astrology and believing so deeply that the planets are the stars. Now, this is one thing I really appreciated when I spoke to Alex. He said astrology indicates, never dictates. That's 100% true
Yep.
from a tantric perspective. 100%.
100% true.
All astrology is navigable. All of it. The worst chart you've, quote unquote, worst chart an astrologer could come up with. We are not, I'm not saying this to you, CJ, but it really bothers me that people believe this. We are not eternalists. Your
No.
chart is not who you are. It's a
No.
suggestion for ways and means to clear karmas that extend past that extended past your last life.
Karmic patterns.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you have to live by those impulses or by the strictures of the planets themselves. This is why Rahu is a 10-level Bhumi Bodhisattva, or a Buddha, if you want to call it in a really tantric way.
Well, in Buddhism as a whole, I mean, Mahayana, it provides ways that are non-tantric, non vow related to remediate these. There are plenty of Dharanis,
Absolutely.
like the Graha Matrika that you can use.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
any
one of my favorites, CJ. You're really telling on me. Marici.
any
I love Marici. She's
any
often
of
a
the
companion deity. I just sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, don't. I want to hear what you have to say. Just let me finish my thought
Yeah,
because I'm getting
absolutely.
too excited. But Graha Matrika, that Dharani, like any listener to my understanding can, find it and read it. Can
All
recite that.
Dharanis are open.
They can recite that to fix their astrological conditions. And we all have those days where
Okay.
nothing goes right, and you talk to your mom, you talk to your dad, your best buddy, the cat down the road. They're all having the same kind of things, car troubles. People are just in a bad mood, and you're like, okay, the astrology is whack right now. And what I love about our tradition, Jin, is that we're given tools to remediate that for us and those around us, those in our retinue, as is referred.
So, CJ, this is the thing. And again, I apologize for interrupting you. I also got excited.
You're
But
good.
okay, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're still my friend.
I won't cry.
Okay. Well, this is the thing. Marici is often who you're describing, the Maha. I'm gonna get the name wrong. The
Graha
Maha.
Batrika.
Yes, the Graha Matrika Mahavijja. So
Yes.
the planetary, the Mahavijja of the greater planets and the stars, the greatest wisdom of the planets and the
Sky
stars.
Mommy.
Sky Mommy, or the Sky Daughter. That's more what she is. But you're not wrong. She's a Matrika, of course, but she is the daughter. She's a small little dipper daughter. So she is invincible and ungraspable and self-illuminating. So I know I've always been like talking about Aeon of the Daughter, like Kurukulla, but actually I also think that Marici is part of this. I also think that like she is if you want to call it, if you want to do a Gnostic like comparative mythology, I think that she's Zoe, personally. So I agree with you that she is also a companion deity. She is the companion deity to Rahu. Now, she's a higher deity, but she's also, as CJ is saying, a Dharani goddess, which means that actually she's also Prajnaparamita, if you understand. So that's really profound at the profound Mahayana layer. So, like CJ said, a sutra goddess, but also the sutra itself, because that's what Prajnaparamita is. It's the text in emptiness, the word in emptiness, the bija itself in emptiness. She is that. So you can say that she's also like she can also just be she can be a Idam, she can be a protector, she can be a Dakini. So she's a great practice for right now because she actually combines three roots into one. And there are actually several famous teachers who practice her at the three roots level. So I just want to say this is not just like a Jin thing where I'm just like into certain goddesses at different times, which is of course very tantric as well. But it's actually she's a really, really important goddess. I just want to say this because it teaches you a lot of subtle things in her sadhana, which again is a Dharani. So from the idea that she's ungraspable, invincible, and
Yep.
invisible.
Mm-hmm. And that's a city she can provide too,
That's
is
right.
invisibility.
Just like one of the Pentacles of Solomon. That's
Dude,
so
I was gonna
interesting.
say that. I was gonna point that out. That's one of the similarities I found. Like the Greek, or not the Greek, I'm getting ahead of myself.
No,
The
don't
West,
worry, CJ.
the
You're good.
Western tradition, especially when it comes to like nuts and bolts spiritual technology, it has so much in common with Vajrayana and like the strangest places. Like this is a total tangent, Jen, and I'm so sorry.
Oh,
But
don't. You have the floor, CJ. Go for it.
I I did a study on wealth vases because I recently received some training, I want to say last year, on wealth vase construction in like kind of a sorceress capacity.
Okay.
Um,
I'm not.
and
I'm pro wealth face.
no, I
Every
know.
person listening to this should, if you're interested in like practical Dharma magic or practical Buddhist magic, everybody should have a wealth face. Like, no
And,
question about it.
and I can make you one. I'm acquiring the ingredients. That's just a little shameless plug.
That's fine.
But um what but what's interesting is the similarities between some of the Zeus related like pantry ritualistic vases that they had with the ingredients in the wealth vase. And I mean obviously it's not one to one,
It's
but
never one to one. People who look for one to one, sorry, CJ, but the people who look for the one to one things, they're taking it too literally.
they're
They're not
schizos.
understanding the subtle. There's a subtlety to to comparative ritual methodology, and it's not literal. Like it's
I
not bat's blood. Like bat's blood doesn't correlate one to one, is what I'm going to say,
no.
because it doesn't really mean what it means. So let me just pause it like that.
And I found kind of a similar correlation with a certain Ganapati sadhana. Um, I'm not really sure the origin of it, whether it's sutric or tantric, so I am being a little bit hesitant on
Well, we can talk about Ganapati as a enlightened protector if you want.
actually, Jen, I was going to request uh, a non-official transmission for me, myself, and the listeners
Oh, CJ.
on Dorje Legpa.
Okay, let's talk about Dorje Legpa for the last
So,
leg.
yeah, I mean, I love that. But my my question is, so with Rahula and with Ekajati, their inner, outer, and secret functions are kind of just self-explanatory, especially with
Yes.
Rahula, right?
Yes, planetary magic,
Yep.
murking. Don't murk, don't use him to murk. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he's associated with that because it's very wrathful magic. It's very wrathful sorcery. He's
And
a wrathful deity, second only really to Ekajati, to be honest, in terms of
when,
worldly, not excuse me,
yes,
well, not worldly, enlightened deities. Now, of course, we did mention Mahakala, who is the dude. I love Mahakala. I think everyone, if I'm gonna say like, I'm not recommending people do anything. I think a Mahakala practice makes a lot of sense for our yuga, for our time right now. I'm just saying, I think it does, but people can do what they want. Um, but his practices are more subtle. That's why I like Mahakala for like a general sort of protector practice for most people,
and you
because actually
mentioned Gesar
he'll
too.
reveal himself. Oh, of course, Gesar.
Um, you mentioned that as being a really great protector from it, he's like a more general protector. You mentioned that in our last show. Sorry to interject.
No, don't be sorry at all.
I don't want to leave Gesar out because he's
we'll
fucking
end on
great.
Gesar, since he is the
No.
king of the Drala. I think that makes sense.
And then we can discuss Legpa privately because I have some questions.
Okay. Sure, that sounds great. Well, we can talk about Legpa a little bit. We'll just give the iconography.
Okay.
So he's a war god. He's very cool. He wears a sorcerer's gown, is what it's called, or a sorcerer's jacket. Can be black, can be dark blue, can have orange and green, or can be blue, maroon, and which maroon is the tantric color in that scheme, or it can be with orange fur. So that actually means something, but we won't get into that. But he is a part of he's part of the retinue of a different deity, a different protector of Nyingma. But he can also be the protector of, he can also be the primary protector. So it depends on your monastery, like what monastery. They're, different gods for different monasteries. They've often done this in Tibet. So he is considered to be a war god. But in contemporary time, that's more, maybe not contemporary time, but since the 1700s, since Longchen Intig anyway, he's considered to be like a gambling god, a blacksmithing god. And
Garwa Nagpo.
Right. So this is the retinue king. He's a king of his own retinue. So he has his own little grouping of deities. And one of the stories, interestingly, Padmasambhava came upon both of them fighting. So they were sort of opposing deities. One had the power of fire and blood. Interesting for you, CJ. And the other one had the power of lightning and wind. So they were fighting on a mountaintop, and there was a huge storm, and that's why Padmasambhava came upon. He came and he subjugated Garwa Nagpo immediately by saying, like, we have to defeat this god, come under the Dharma, and Garwa said yes. Garwa Nagpo said yes, and so he fought with Guru Padmasambhava against Dorje Legpa. Because Dorje Legpa was the higher, he's not really a higher god, but whereas Garwa Nagpo was the god of a mountain, like a physical mountain, Dorje Legpa is more of a god he is a war god, so he could be propitiated in other ways other than mountain grandfather worship. So they teamed up, defeated him, and so they can be switched out. That's what I was trying to say. I'm sorry, I didn't really explain it that well. Garwa Nagpo and Dorje Legpa can sometimes be substituted for one another, and this also means iconographically. Sometimes they'll incorporate aspects of one another. So one of my favorite Dorje Legpa icons actually is riding Garwa Nagpo's mountain goat with the entwined horns, like a unicorn, but they're two horns, but they're just entwined.
That's the one I know the most, is him riding the goat.
But sometimes he also rides a snow leopard or snow lion.
Yes.
But this is a really important mount for him because traditionally he used to accept the hearts of tigers. So this is considered to be very transgressive in Tantra because tigers are actually kind of gods in their own right, almost.
They'd love him
tigers,
in Thailand.
Right? So tigers are considered to be land protectors, Kistrapalas, but they're not good or evil. Like, people are like, oh, well, tigers eat people sometimes. Like, yeah, Kistrapalas can eat people too, because they're not bound by human morality. They're just their job is to protect the mountain or the forest. They're just the local god, you could say. So they just embodied in a tiger. So by offering the tigers to Dorje Legpa, it's kind of like imbuing him. That's the idea. Imbuing him with the powers of all these places.
That's cool as fuck.
It is, but then they began to offer humans. So this is why Dorje Legpa wears a necklace, I couldn't think of it, of hearts around his neck. because it was showing that like this is the former thing. So it'll be like however many magic number. Usually 50 is the number that they depict, but not always. Sometimes they'll show like 10 or 18 or multiples of 9 or 3, things like that. But there'll always be a magic number or a reason behind it. Sometimes it'll be 11, depends on who's painting it, right? But there's something, it's always magic. So it's always about like, there's always a secret, or not magic, but there's a secret meaning to all of these things. But it's showing that like, even though he was propitiated as a demon god, even though he is and presents as a demon god, he's actually in the greater retinue of Padmasambhava, especially for Nyingma thinking, right?
Yeah.
Like he's a protector specifically of Padmasambhava. So one of the things that you and I have talked about a little bit is Modice. So Sri Devi is the goddess, obviously Mahakali or Matangi sometimes, depends. There are different Sri Devis. Sri Devi again is like Mahakala, it's a class of deities rather than a specific deity herself. But usually it's Mahakali. So I'll just say that for the recording. So Modice are usually given, it's usually a practice associated with her, but actually Dorje Legpa being associated with gambling is also associated with a kind of Modice. But these Modice are not the knuckle bones that are associated with Sri Devi. These are actually the meteorite dice that are forged from his friend Garwa Nagpo. So
Based. That's really cool.
That's another little divination practice that some people, I don't know anything about that, of course, but that some people may know how to do. But it takes a lot of tektite to make a pair of dice. So if you've seen them, sometimes they'll, there are Buddhist forges that make these kind of tektite tools and implements. Sometimes they'll sell them, and they're usually 8-sided. But sometimes they can just be the regular 4-sided kind. It depends. Again, it depends who makes it and what text they're using. That's why it's important to follow the text for your practice, especially for protector. To know, like, and like if you choose to do a protector practice, like it's not a small endeavor.
No,
it's a big endeavor, and it's a commitment to doing it, to regular practice. And sometimes especially enlightened protectors, and this is perhaps why, and you can tell me what you think, CJ, but this is why people sometimes have problems with the enlightened protectors, is they don't just give you what you want. Their job is to make your life conducive to Dharma. Sometimes that means making your life, quote unquote, harder.
Yes.
But not necessarily harder as in like in opposition to you, but it might be in opposition to your desire.
I would agree with that. And I would also say, I'm not going to say which protectors I have, because that is something I would like to keep private. Because I do have a protector practice. I have multiple. And I think I've told Jin about it. But for those of you who are not in the know, I have a protector practice, and it is kind of new to me having this practice, but there's way more of an obligation, especially when it comes to the Torma and the Serkiam offerings. Than there is with like, Kurukulla, or even, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm sorry, Jin. Or even Hayagriva, since we've been talking about him. It's a much different animal, and if you don't have those other practices kind of down pat, you don't have your Yidam practice down pat, you don't have your Guru practice down pat, I wouldn't recommend having a protector practice.
So you're touching on something so important, CJ, and you're right. We shouldn't even share excuse me. Sorry about that. I had cinnamon in my throat.
You're good. Many such cases.
I don't even like sharing my Idam, my protector, my Dakini, like any deity that people think it is. I guarantee you it's not. I don't necessarily do it on purpose. I change too. So sometimes if I talk about something, it means that I'm not practicing it at that time.
Yes.
But I might go back to that. I might return to that. But that usually, if I talk about something specifically, it's not what I'm doing at that moment. So that's kind of how I navigate it. But again, it's imperfect, but I would rather not share any of it. But it's inevitable because you're going to know the practices that you actually do or have done the longest. You're going to know those the best. You're going to have the best insight into the deity. You're going to have the most knowledge of the implements, the iconography, the kind of conceptualization, the visualization, the sort of gross the inner, outer, and secret cities. Even if you haven't accomplished even an outer city, you'll still have a contour of what who the deity is and what is like going on in the sadhana. So that's why you have to also relay the things you know. Like I can't just talk shit about like not that I talk shit. I'm saying like I can't explain Yamataka practice because again, I don't do it.
Me too.
So
Yeah,
it would be like
I agree.
relaying something I absolutely have no idea of doing to like on a podcast. I'm not comfortable doing that, nor would I ever do that. But I agree with what CJ said. It's important not to like reveal too much and to not reveal your practices. But I will say like what CJ is saying, like about this is why I prefer CJ. This is why I prefer enlightened protectors. It's not that they don't take a torma or whatever, or you can have the wooden tormas. They're both wrathful and peaceful. By the way, I have both. It's a very good puja tool, but you don't just have to make them. That's one way, but you don't have to.
I like making them.
I
think
do
it's
too,
fun.
and you know it makes sense. If you can do it, then you should do it. But there are multiple options, as everything in Tantra, right? So the enlightened protectors are basically just Buddhas. They just don't look like
Yes.
Buddhas. They don't
Yes.
appear as Buddhas.
Yes.
But a Buddha is happy with water, a tea lamp, or a butter lamp, not necessarily
Incense.
for our time, but something like that, and a little bit of incense. That makes a Buddha happy. Because it's not really making the Buddha happy. It's showing that you're like taking refuge, cultivating bodhicitta. It's not really
Protectors
about
are,
even.
yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just
No,
going
you
to say
didn't. It's totally fine.
they're just
See.
much more demanding, especially the
Yes.
worldly ones.
Yes, the more worldly you go outside the mandala, the further away from the central deity. You can think of it like that, just like that. They get more, yeah, the input needed to access them increases.
Just like with the Sakya witches taking the life force of that family.
Well, isn't it? That's an interesting paradox too. Because if you didn't need the wrathful practices, so that's obviously the Sakyapa at that time in the 1400s were in a magical battle with the Gelugs, with the Gelugpa. And so they cultivated this specific bodyguard / wrathful activity practice to go against the sorcery and also people. So both. So they're kind of engaging in nebulous dharmic practices, you could say, going against this other school who kind of cast them into sort of like a peripheral royal family. So the Sakyapa for a time was they considered themselves like the head of Tibetan Buddhism, but the Gelugpa displaced them. So a lot of these wrathful practices come out of like inter-school rivalry. So if you didn't need to engage in the wrathful activities, you wouldn't have to give up life force. But if you want to continue engaging in wrathful activities, then you also have to give life force. So that's the paradox.
And I mean, on the subject, this is something I was going to say earlier, but my ADHD didn't allow me. Wrathful practices still have utility. And that is one of the spiciest things I've said on either podcast. But with this caveat, used skillfully and used only when your life or the lives of your family are in danger.
So CJ, I actually spoke with Greg K about Rahula. I know you'll be surprised to hear that, probably, because he's like very mild person and he doesn't necessarily seem like a wrathful activity person. But he rightfully brought up the fact that actually to do wrathful sorcery in an enlightened way, skillful way, with Rahula, or with Tsar Rahula, is to, he has to actually meet preconditions. There's a set of preconditions in one of his tantras, actually several of his tantras, that have to be met before you can perform any kind of wrathful sorcery or even drowa. So we won't really get into drowa because I think that's a little too ferocious for most people, but I think it's a really important note. It's not a constriction. It's not a constriction of you, and it's not a constriction of the deity. It's how his oath, it's like the nature of like the dharmic oath. It's the nature of the truth. You
A
cannot
little bit
just,
legalistic. Yeah.
yes, because that's what karma is. It's a little bit of a
Yep.
negotiation, and that's what tantra is. It's like trying to pull the string, and that even goes back to Marici. I guess that they cannot really be separated, Marici and Rahula. Interesting that sometimes in Indian and Iranian iconography, Marici's chariot is sometimes pulled by Rahu as the charioteer. So that's interesting. But I think she is considered to hold the thread of karma. So between the planets and people, between the planets and the lower worlds. So she holds a sewing needle, which is threaded with this string of invisible light, but it's really golden, or it's described as golden, but it's not really golden as people think. It's not visible. It's invisible gold. It's like the sparkling of water when the sun is hitting it, and there are slight waves. It's not like crazy waves, but just, slight waves, and there's kind of like a dancing. That's very Dakini-like. That's very Marici. So people can think of it like that. It's that color. So basically, she rides through the universe between the sun and the moon. She arises in hell, pulling the thread of karma with her, but also making sure that everything abides by dharma. So yes, she wields karma just in the same way that Rahula is bound by karma as a worldly. Well, he's not worldly, but he is kind of. He's an enlightened protector, as I said, but he has worldly functions as well, is what we're saying. And so to perform his worldly functions has karmic implications. So he has to abide by these set of rules, cosmic rules, maybe ontological rules. But anyways, he has to abide by them, regardless of how you understand it. And so that's the same with all protectors. That's from protector, that's Mahakala to Suimarpo, to a butcher in Suimarpo's retinue. It doesn't matter. They're still bound by certain strictures and rules. That's what makes Buddhist sorcery so interesting. Okay, so let's end on Gesar, since he is the king of the Drala. And I would say that there's an aspect, I know a lot of people love the Norse stuff, and everybody knows I'm such a hater. That's fine. But I'll actually say something I think is interesting. I think Gesar, in some ways, I'm not saying he's Odin or Wotan or whatever. I do think that there is a considerable overlap in many aspects of their iconography, story, abilities, and origin.
So you have to say this at the end of the episode? Like that's really interesting. I've never heard that before.
Well, I don't know. I don't like saying it's a Jin exclusive, but it definitely, it's how if I was appraising the comparative mythology, admittedly, it doesn't resonate with me at all. Like, I don't really get any of the Germanic or Norse things at all. But from what I understand, it does seem like to be the case. Association with dogs, with horses, of course, with riders, with a specific grouping of riders, with all the war gods, in fact, are in his retinue. So they all are cavalrymen. They ride on the sky horse, on the wind, on the lungta itself, on the words of the mantra itself. They ride on the actual wind. They increase the channels in the body. They tame evil spirits in the world. They tame evil gods in the world. They tame evil warlords in the world. They protect who they consider to be he's the protector, he's the wind horse. You can even say that, and that's not even an ontologically incorrect sort of parallel or syncretism. He himself is the wind horse. When you recite the mantra, you actually this is more inner, and CJ will know what I'm talking about, but for people who don't practice Buddhism who are listening, you pull the wind from your lower, sort of the lower emptiness at first, but it's to cycle it through. It's to cycle it through in kind of a figure eight, more like that. So you're cycling it through. So you're pulling the wind horse. He is actually that, but he's also the channel itself. That's why I made the joke at the very beginning, which CJ, to his credit, did laugh at, where I said the wind horse has to trot. This is even how it's described when you're building lung ta. You want the mantra to sound, to have the clip clap of a trotting horse. Like he is flying in the channel itself. This is not just to performance of the outer mantra, like outer performance of the mantra, like for people to hear you say it, although that can be one way. It can also be for yourself to hear it. But then there's a secret way where he is actually the channel itself. So he both is the wind, the air within it, and the physical channel, meaning that he is the cause of obstruction, very Ganapati, to bring that up, but he's also the cause of clearing the obstruction. The obstructions are not really his obstructions. They're actually our obstructions, our own obstructions, mental fetters. But they also manifest, that's right, and they manifest in the physical way. So, sorry, CJ, I know that I went on for a little long, but no. I think that was I just wanted to end on something epic for you, really.
No, I loved it.
Okay.
I ate that up. Big fan of Gesar.
So he's a really important protector. If you don't have a protector and you're like, what's the protector for me? Well, actually, Gesar's practice is relatively open. Anyone can do a Gesar prayer. Anyone can do a wind horse prayer, a lung ta capacity prayer. And in fact, a lot of accomplished tantrics do wind horse prayers in order to build up their mantric capacity. So it's not like some, it's not some lesser practice just because it's more open. Maybe it just has more resonance with more people. It's more within the realm of Dharmakaya for them.
Who doesn't love a badass steppe warlord who serves the Dharma and acts as a protector with his retinue of badass warlords who are just like him?
And he's also a sorcerer. One of maybe the most important things to end on, I think. He is the worldly king, the worldly Drala. He's not just a warrior. He's a warrior and a sorcerer. One of his main functions is to tame worldly sorcery.
Well, Jin, I think this one is certified gold.
Okay.
If I say so myself. And
I'm glad you're happy, CJ. CJ, please plug yourself. I know you said you didn't necessarily have anything to offer right now, but I think just, as I said on Rejects, I do think you have a very innovative method in consecrating the Solomonic Pentacles. I'm personally impressed by it. I like this kind of like syncretic folk magic approach. I think that's much closer to how Tantra really is supposed to look like. That's just my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for Dharma or anyone else, just Jin. But I do think that is more what Tantra is supposed to look like in terms of like the blending of technologies, ritual technologies.
Well, and really, I think something that I will plug, and it's not out yet, so I empty promise until it's fulfilled, but I am working on an herbal dictionary of tantric materia. So it's not just going to be plants, it's going to be bones, it's going to be just different things that you would use if you're bringing kind of sorcery into your dharmic practice. It's going to be on my blog. I'm not going to charge people for it. I want it to be available to the public. The other thing that I would like to plug is if you being the listener, if you are interested in any sort of reading, I do runes. I do a very, very rudimentary Mo. I'm hoping to change that in this coming year, getting some more formal training. And I also read playing cards. So if you are interested, I'm going to be offering New Year's readings. And I am also working on kind of incorporating some tantric astrology into that via Tibetan and Bhutanese sources. So if you're interested in that, you can find me on Instagram under Fire Blood Bone, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Oh, and buy a wealth vase.
And also, I want to ask you a question, CJ, as the end for this.
Sure.
Because I didn't really interview you that much. I'm sorry. I kind of made it like a very co-creative episode, I'll say.
Loved it.
CJ, what are the three things, the three materias that you can bring from the conceptual carnal ground? Doesn't have to just be plants, but maybe do one plant, one mineral, and one dirt. What are the three things that every aspiring tantric needs in their apothecary?
I would say mustard seeds, first and foremost. You can do
What
so
color?
much with. I'm thinking I would start with just the yellow ones. Or black. I mean, you can do different things with different mustard seeds. I would also add, I mean, for us Kurukulla stands, I would add red lotus flowers. They're actually super easy to get your hands on now, via the internet, and she fucking loves them. And then the final thing that I would add is go to an actual cemetery, and if they have trees or limbs on the ground, you can do a lot with that. Oh, I'll throw one more in there. Cedar. Cedar is very important in a lot of Native American smudging practices, and it's actually used kind of similarly in like the Riwo Sengcho. I can't use juniper for Lungta prayers because I'm highly allergic to juniper, so I've just substituted that for cedar. So yeah, those are my four
Awesome.
materials.
Thank you so much, CJ. I know I put you on the spot, but I knew you were
Nah.
I knew you were capable of it, so I wasn't like, oh my God. I also prefer cedar, just for the record. Like Tuja, I think has a much better smell when burnt, and it's a lot easier to handle. It does not cause like urticaria or itching or redness and irritation like juniper really can, and it doesn't have sharp edges either. So just it doesn't, people will be like, oh, there's a huge difference in ritual methodology. No, that's more of a Western way to think, honestly. Regional sort of like the regional substitutions are also okay.
Yeah.
They do that in Tantra. Yes.
Yep. All
So,
right, Jen.
Thank you so much, CJ. Really appreciate it. I won't keep you any longer. And
You're good.
everybody check him out, and I'll make sure the show notes have everything to get a hold of him. Thank you, guys.
I can't wait to
Appreciate
come
it.
back on. Thank you, guys.